When the police took him to court, the 40 women who were assaulted by this man weren't happy with his sentencing. Therefore, they took matters into their own hands, ganged up on him, and stabbed him 70 times. Here are 7 cases of criminals who were killed in court. Number 7. Claus Grabowski. May 5, 1980, Anna and her mom, Marion Bachmeier, had a massive argument. The disagreement was so intense that Anna skipped school that day. Unknown to Marianne, this would be the last time she would ever see her beloved daughter, marking a heartbreaking moment of unexpected farewell. June 3, 1950, Marion Bachmeier was born in a town close to Hildesheim in West Germany. When she was only 16, she got pregnant not once but twice. She had to make a really tough call and ended up giving both of her babies up for adoption. 1972, she was pregnant again, and this time around she kept the child. November 14, 1974, that's the day Anna came into this world. Life wasn't exactly a walk in the park for Marianne and Anna though. They were always on the move, going from place to place. One of those places was Lübeck. Marianne had to work many jobs to support them. But no matter what, the bond between mother and daughter stayed strong, even when things got tough. But then one day, the young Anna was abducted, sexually abused, and murdered by Claus Grabowski. Now, this guy was a real creep. If you could believe it, he'd already been to jail for hurting kids before. To make matters worse, he lived right next door to him in Lübeck, West Germany. It was a very scary situation. That day, Anna, who'd once visited his home to play with his cats, went over there again. This time, Claus actually grabbed Anna and kept her locked up at his place for a while. But things would take a real dark and twisted turn when he would strangle Anna with a pair of pantyhose and dump her body near a canal in a cardboard box. It's really sick. Claus Grabowski was apprehended for engaging in unspeakable activities. The footage left no room for doubt, leading to his swift arrest. As the case unfolded in the courtroom, the defense attorneys presented an unusual argument to explain Grabowski's disturbing behavior. They argued that their client was grappling with significant hormone issues, leading him to make such disturbing choices. In a further twist, it was claimed that Grabowski had even undergone a procedure to remove his genitals. Right, he even took some special medicine for it. March 6, 1981, things got even crazier. Marianne stormed into that courtroom with a tiny gun in hand. She aimed it at Grabowski's back and shot him 7 times, killing him on the spot. Witnesses said Marianne was beyond furious and even called him names. She wanted to shoot him in the face, but settled on shooting him in the back, hoping he'd kick the bucket. People all across Germany were shocked. Everyone was talking about it. Marianne herself ended up on trial for taking matters into her own hands. When she was in court, she claimed she didn't remember what went down, but the way she handled that gun made folks question her story. So they get a doctor to check if she was telling the truth. They asked her to write something on a piece of paper, and guess what? She wrote, "I did it for you, Anna," along with 7 little hearts. Those hearts may have symbolized the 7 years Anna lived and the 7 shots Marianne fired at Grabowski. Well, it turns out Marianne was found guilty of planning to murder Grabowski. She got hit with a 6-year sentence. But hey, she got out early, serving just half of it. People started calling her the Revenge Mother of Germany, and that name stuck with her for a while. Pretty crazy, right? September 17, 1996, Marianne would sadly lose her battle with pancreatic cancer at just 46 years old. They laid her to rest beside her daughter Anna in a peaceful spot called Bergtor Cemetery in Lübeck. Number 6. Sel Angalo. April 18, 2014. There was a trial going on at the new federal courthouse in downtown Salt Lake City, and the first person on trial was Sel Angalo. Angalo stood before the judge, unaware that it would be the final remaining minutes of his life. Born on May 22, 1988, Sel Angalo lived in the quaint town of Salt Lake City, Utah, United States of America. Angalo was part of a gang called the Tongan Crip Gang, or TCG. He was known as C-Down and had been involved in criminal stuff before he was a teenager. He had a record, including robbing stores and being in a chase with another gang member shooting at U.S. Marshals, resulting in his arrest. Angalo had already been sentenced up to 15 years in prison before this trial. April 18, 2014, with the trial beginning in the early hours, Judge Campbell decided that Angalo shouldn't be tied up or restrained in front of the jury because they were out of tablecloths. As the trial started and the first witness began talking, things got tense. Some of the security officers didn't know that Angalo wouldn't be restrained. They were in for a big surprise when Angalo, a 25-year-old gang member, suddenly stood up, grabbed a pen and a pencil, and fiercely charged towards the witness who started talking about his gang. One security officer reacted quickly, pulling out his gun and fatally shooting Angalo 4 times while in the air, trying to jump over the witness stand. The officer then went towards him and told him to drop the pen, but he didn't respond. Angalo was rushed to the hospital, where he later died. After the shooting, Judge Campbell said she regretted not restraining Angalo and didn't expect something like this to happen. The security officer who shot Angalo said he had to do it to protect the witness. He didn't know Angalo personally, but he knew his gang had a violent reputation. Angalo's family was very upset, and they sued the security officer for manslaughter. But then 3 months later, the U.S. Department of Justice said the security officer actually did the right thing and didn't charge him with any crime. At first, the DOJ wanted to keep the video of the incident a secret because they were worried about the gangs coming after them. But after a big legal fight, they finally released a video to the public. Turns out the video played a big part in proving that Angalo's family was wrong with their lawsuit. They said that he only had a pen, and the officer didn't have to shoot him 4 times. But the court disagreed. They watched that video, and U.S. District Judge John Dodal said that the officer's actions were totally reasonable given the situation. While Angalo's buddies got put away for 10 to 30 years, Angalo's trial got canceled because of the shooting. They called it a mistrial. Once the video came out, people did start arguing about whether the police used too much force. Some, including Angalo's family lawyer, thought the officer panicked and could have handled things differently. But there were others who thought that the officer did what he had to do to protect himself from a real and immediate threat. The whole thing stirred up a lot of controversy and debate about how police use force. Number 5. Soden Prak. November 29, 2017. 72-year-old Soden Prak, accused of being a war criminal in Bosnia and Croatia, is being told to spend 20 years in jail, and he didn't like that one bit. In a shocking move right there in the courtroom, Prak refused to accept the verdict and decided to end his life on live TV. Soden Prak was born on the 2nd of January 1945 in Kaplinja, Yugoslavia. He had 3 university degrees, and this guy wasn't just a bookworm, he had serious leadership skills as well. When those wars were happening in Yugoslavia in the 90s, Prak stepped up big time. He joined Croatia's armies and even rose to the rank of Major General. But here's the thing, some bad stuff went down when he was in charge. The UN claimed that he knew about soldiers doing terrible things to Muslims, but he didn't really do much to stop it. He also turned a blind eye to plans for murders, attacks on international groups, and even the destruction of a historic bridge and mosques in Mostar. 2017, the UN War Crime Courtroom sentenced Prak to 20 years of life in prison for his crimes against humanity. He was one of 6 leaders facing the International Criminal Tribunal because of what they did during those wars. The UN judges turned down Prak's appeals, and that's when Prak couldn't stand it anymore. He stood up and said, "Judges, Soden Prak is not a war criminal. With disdain, I reject your verdict."
You may be seated.
Судzi, Soden Prak nije ratni zločinac. S prijezirom odbacujem vašu presudu.
Stop, please. Please sit down.
The judge stopped the trial, and doctors rushed to help him. But unfortunately, Prak died on his way to the hospital. The Prime Minister of Croatia felt really angry about what happened, and he said it wasn't fair to Prak and the Croatian people. In Mostar, where a lot of Bosnian Croats live, people lit candles and prayed for Prak. Pralyak's lawyer thought the court wasn't treating him right. She believed Pralyak saw himself as innocent and felt the court was judging not just him, but also the politics and history of his whole nation. Number 4. Michael Maron. 2009, Michael Maron executed a wild stunt to dodge his mortgage payments. Swiftly, the court caught wind and charged him, slapping him with a hefty 7 to 21-year sentence. Overwhelmed by the grim verdict, Martin covertly decided to end his life, marking a tragic close to a day of reckoning. Michael Maron, born December 2, 1958, in Oak Harbor, Washington, was a man of faith and intellect. His journey would take him from Brigham Young University to Japan as part of a church service. 1987, he would become a certified lawyer at Yale Law School. Despite a successful career with the big banks like Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch, focusing on their Asian operations, his life took a dark turn. 2009, facing insurmountable mortgage payments, Maron set his mansion ablaze, hoping to escape this financial burden. His elaborate escape plan involving a rope ladder and a scuba diving suit didn't convince the fire investigators. Charged with arson and facing a serious penalty akin to second-degree murder, Maron's desperation grew. As Maron stood in the courtroom, the weight of his actions bore down on him. The evidence was stacked against him, painting a clear picture of a planned arson to escape mortgage payments. The charges he faced were grave, and the prospect of a long stint in prison in Arizona loomed large. Upon hearing the guilty verdict, a chilling silence enveloped the courtroom. In a swift, secretive motion, Maron placed something in his mouth, washing it down with a sip of water.
A man who just learns he's heading to prison for arson, caught on tape, putting something in his mouth as he sat in the courtroom and eventually collapsing and dying.
Moments later, his body convulsed before collapsing to the floor, plunging the courtroom into chaos. The deadly grip of cyanide, the poison he'd ingested, claimed his life before he could reach the hospital. Investigations later uncovered a can of cyanide in his car and an email to his son showing the intent to end his life in the event of an unfavorable verdict. The tragic end of Michael Maron left many in shock and sorrow. His desperate act to escape financial ruin and a lengthy prison sentence culminated in a heartbreaking finale. The events that unfolded in the courtroom on that day left a lingering question. Could the despair and fear that enveloped Maron have been alleviated, possibly rewriting the tragic ending to his tale? Number 3. Nathaniel Richmond. August 21st, 2017. In the early morning hours, 51-year-old Nathaniel Richmond had a plan. He saw a judge named Joseph Bruzzese Jr. walk into the courthouse in Steubenville, Ohio. Richmond had a gun and started shooting at this judge. Now, why did this all happen? Well, turns out Malik Richmond, who was Nathaniel Richmond's son, had raped a girl who was his classmate. The whole mess kicked off when a picture of him and his buddy Mays carrying the girl, who looked totally out of it, went viral on social media. Next thing you know, Malik ends up in court and has to face trial on some serious charges. And, well, his old man would jump in, wanting to take the fall for his son. In a grave turn of events, he would lose control and attempt to kill the judge. Unfortunately, this action led to dire consequences for him. August 2017, as the judge approached the entrance of the courthouse, Nathaniel was there, waiting for him with murderous intent. On seeing the judge, he brought out his gun and ruthlessly shot the judge 3 times. Despite the wounds sustained from the gunshots, the judge tried to get back on his feet. Bruzzese fought back. He would take out his own gun and shoot at Richmond. But as Richmond tried to run away to his car, he was caught by another officer showing up, also shooting at him. Nathaniel found himself unable to proceed with a getaway, and later on, died at the scene due to his fatal wounds. There's a video of this whole thing from surveillance footage, but it took 3 years of fighting in court to make it public. Even though the judge was shot in the stomach, he stayed on his feet and even walked across the street. Soon, more police officers and deputies came onto the scene, followed by an ambulance to help the judge, who would need surgery and, with time, become fit enough to return to his job. 2018, Malik Richmond made news again the following year. After spending 9 months in a juvie center, he returned back to Steubenville High School. That same month, he was gearing up for his first college football game at Youngstown State University. However, some weren't happy about it. A petition started making rounds, opposing his involvement in the game. The university took note and decided he wouldn't play that season. That said, he still remained part of the football team. Number 2. Aku Yadav, 1990s. The streets of Kasturba Nagar near Nagpur, India, used to be haunted by this guy, Bharat Kalikara, better known as Aku Yadav. His first crime, 1991, an awful gang rape. But that was just the beginning. Yadav and his gang terrorized hundreds of families for over 10 years, wreaking havoc on men, women, and even kids. They would beat, torture, mutilate, and kill people. They would break into homes, steal money, and take over properties. Word is Yadav was responsible for 40 women being raped, some of them underage. His crimes were so disturbing they would become the stuff of legends in Kasturba Nagar. Despite all the violence, Yadav seemed untouchable. The Nagpur police locked him up about 14 times, but he had connections. He bribed, boozed, and had a corrupt network that kept him free. Many victims told the authorities what happened, only to be ignored or brushed off. One time, a 22-year-old woman had reported assault, but the police accused her of having an affair with Yadav and turned her away. But all dictatorships end. August 13, 2004, justice finally arrived, though not in the way anyone expected. When Yadav entered the courtroom for his trial, a woman showed up and started smacking him with her slipper. She gave him a bone-chilling ultimatum. Either she'd kill him or he'd kill her. And just like that, a crowd of over 200 women stormed the courtroom. Armed with rocks, chili powder, and knives, they sought their revenge on this monster who had tormented them for years. In about 15 minutes, this guy got stabbed 70 times. And to really drive the point home, a woman reportedly cut off his, Aku Yadav was dead. After everything calmed down, people showed a lot of care and encouragement to these women. During an interview with one woman he molested, she talked about his notoriety, also stating he stole a watch from her house. And when she challenged him about the incident, he shouted at her for accusing him of stealing and tortured her alongside her husband.
आणि माझ्या घरचा माणूस बाहेर होता ना, त्याला एक झापड मारला जोरात. माझ्या असं अंगाची पाहायची थोडंसं याच्यातच पोचली असं लागे की त्याचं काय करू ना काय नाही.
And number 1. David Paradiso. March 5th, 2009. David Paradiso was in the middle of his murder trial when suddenly he lost control. The courtroom was shocked as Paradiso went crazy, attempting to attack Judge Cinda Fox with a hidden weapon. Born in 1981, Paradiso didn't exactly walk the straight and narrow in life. This guy has a laundry list of run-ins with the law, starting with some vandalism and issues related with drugs and alcohol. 2001, when David was just 21, he would get busted for driving under the influence. A few years later, he tried giving the cops the slip, but ended up convicted for evading law enforcement. The following year wasn't any better for him. He was found guilty of felony battery on a correctional officer. 2006, things would take a darker turn. David would be arrested for some serious stuff: murder and kidnapping. The victim was his 20-year-old girlfriend, Eileen Pelt, from Auburn. He stabbed Eileen to death in the backseat of his mom's car while they were cruising through a back alley in Lodi.
And I knew that, he was having breakdowns, and I could see that things were going on. I knew from the visit that he had a weapon.
After the stabbing, David forced the driver to drive all the way to Amador County to dispose of Eileen's body. David's lawyer, Charles Pacheco, had been trying to argue that David was just messed up on meth when all this happened. March 4th, 2009 was the day of the trial, and it was the day that he met his doom when he tried to attack the judge. Just before this happened, Paradiso's mom looked very upset and left the room. Judge Fox called for a break, and as the jurors were leaving, Paradiso made his move. As he walked up fast to meet up with her, he would throw several punches at her face and body. With immediate action, he would quickly bring out a knife and stab her in the arms. Bailiffs quickly ran to help her, and Detective Eric Bradley, in charge of this case, without thinking twice, acted swiftly by pulling out his gun and shooting this guy 3 times to stop this. Fortunately, Judge Fox, though injured, had a bandage on her arm and left the courthouse on a stretcher. She even reassured reporters, saying, "I'm okay," before being taken to the hospital for treatment. For safety reasons, they immediately locked down the courthouse. After the incident, there were many questions, and people were overwhelmed with emotions. Paradiso's mom, Deborah, was extremely angry. She'd warned the authorities about her son's violent tendencies and mentioned he had a weapon. She wondered why they didn't search him properly before he entered the courtroom that day. She was so upset and described what happened. He just leapt up, tried to stab the judge, actually stabbed her. Then they shot him in the head and killed him. David's brother Aaron agreed with their mom. They had informed the authorities about David's mental health problems and everything. He said, "Man, it's finally done, huh?" Now, what are your thoughts on the balance between enforcing the law and preserving the sanctity of life?